Welcome to the Anglotopia podcast, where we explore British travel, history, and culture. And I'm your host, Jonathan Thomas. Today's episode is a little different and rather special. We're recording this one on location in Chicago at the Chicago History Museum on the occasion of His Majesty the King's official birthday. I'm here because my wife and I have been invited to the King's birthday garden party hosted by the British Consulate General here in Chicago. And before the champagne starts flowing, I've been given the rare privilege of sitting down with the man throwing the party. Richard Hyde is His Majesty's Consul General in Chicago, the senior British diplomatic representative across 14 states in the American Midwest. He's a career diplomat who has served in India, Venezuela, Costa Rica, Texas, and before taking up his post here in Chicago, he's kindly given us time before the reception to talk about his work, the special relationship between Britain and America, and what it actually means to celebrate the King's birthday on this side of the Atlantic. And I should mention, we're recording this at the Chicago History Museum, so we thank them for hosting us and putting together a room for us to record in, which is rather appropriate given the deep and rather touching historical connection between this city and Britain, which we'll share more on in a moment. Richard, a very happy King's birthday, and welcome to the Anglotopia podcast.
Well, thanks. Great to have you here, and it's great to celebrate with you.
Yeah, we were delighted to be here. So, before we get into the occasion, I'd love to know a little more about your journey. Your career as a diplomat with the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. You served in India, Venezuela, Costa Rica, Texas, and now Chicago. How does someone end up with a career like that? And what drew you to the diplomatic service?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Liverpool in the north of England, and my father was an immigrant from India, and talked to me about his travels as a child. So I always wanted to see the world, always wanted to travel. And to be honest, I thought about the Navy, I thought about the Air Force. I'm not brave enough for that stuff. So diplomacy. I've always been interested in politics, international relations, other cultures. So for me, it was a natural thing to do, and I've been all around the world, pretty much in most continents. And yeah, I find myself now in one of the great world cities, Chicago, which feels like a journey around the world because of all the communities here, the incredible diversity here, and the way Chicago embraces that. It makes me feel like, this is a great place to be.
It is a great place to be. And while we love London, Chicago is always close to our hearts. So you've been Consul General now for a couple of years in Chicago. What has surprised you most about Chicago and the Midwest when you arrived? What did you not expect?
One of the great sort of surprises for me as a Brit living in the United States is how we don't understand this country at all. We think we do. We kind of sometimes speak the same language, and Brits assume that the United States is like really obvious. I lived 5 years in Texas, moved here almost 2 years ago, and it's almost like I'm in a completely different country at times. Houston was a fabulous city as well, but Chicago is one of the world's greatest cities. And my wife and I say we are truly blessed to be able to represent our country here. I live in an incredible apartment with the most spectacular views of this city, and it is a spectacular city. I like to joke whenever I have events, especially if New Yorkers are in the room, by saying that Chicago is one of America's two great cities, proper downtowns. Everywhere else is sprawl, but Chicago and New York are the two great ones. But the difference is in Chicago, the people are nice, the streets are clean, and the food's better. New Yorkers get very upset about the food. They kind of agree with the first two, but the food, they disagree. But the reason I say the food is better is that, New York has great food, London has great food, Chicago has great food. Here it's accessible. Chicago is the most accessible city. You don't have to be super, super rich and super, super influential to be able to enjoy this city. Everything is out there. You can go to Navy Pier, to the Chicago Shakespeare Theatre, which is phenomenal. It has incredible theatre culture here. It has great music, classical, contemporary. You had the Blues Festival last week, the Jazz Festival coming up. You've got the Air and Water Show. This city in the summer, I can't think of anywhere I would rather spend my summer than in Chicago.
Yeah, we tend to agree. The Chicago summer can't be beat. And a lot of people don't know that you can fly to almost any continent from Chicago. So it's a great place to be at the center of the world. And Chicago likes to think it's at the center of the world.
Well, in many ways it is, right? Because, obviously United States, 50 different states, 50 different countries. I have the pleasure of working across 14 very different places, very different states. But one thing they all have in common is Chicago's kind of the gateway to those places. Yeah. So, I always thought when I was traveling around in Kansas or in Indiana or Ohio, there's all these everyone competes. There's some amazing cities all across the Midwest, but Chicago, with its airport and its history, is kind of the gateway into the Midwest. So yeah, it is a kind of a window on the world for the Midwest.
Have you been surprised at how much British stuff there is in Chicago? Because you got some great pubs that are not just fake; they're pretty good.
Yeah,
It's good Sunday roast.
I've spent my career complaining about British and Irish pubs around the world, because they're always kind of an imagination of what a British pub should be. There's a lot more authenticity here, and there's some. I mean, one of my favourite restaurants here, which I'm very biased because it's a British restaurant, is Hawksmoor.
Yes.
Hawksmoor is a British style steakhouse, one of the best steakhouses in London. In fact, the one in Liverpool, where my hometown is, just won some big award as well. And I'm not advertising for Hawksmoor, but I'm just saying that their Sunday roast is as good a Sunday roast as you'll get anywhere in the UK. A lot of pubs here serve great beer, and they do it with the right ambience. There are Irish pubs here I love. I mean, I'm from Liverpool. It's a very Irish city. The Irish pubs here are more authentic than you'll get elsewhere. In fact, my good friend Devin Bruce, who's one of our partners for this evening's event, he has an interest in probably the best Irish pub I've been to outside of Ireland, which is Celtic Crossings, which is a proper pub serving proper Guinness, the way it should be served. No TVs or food or any of that stuff. Just bit of music and great beer.
Well, if you ever come out to South Bend for anything, you have to go to Fiddler's Hearth. That's the best.
I've heard it's good as well. Yeah,
it's the best Irish pub around. The steak and Guinness pie is almost as good as anything you'll have in Britain.
Brilliant.
Don't tell the British that.
No, I love Guinness. I love steak. What can go wrong?
So this is a question I've really been wondering about. What does a consul general actually do? Because you're not an ambassador. What people hear diplomat, they think ambassador. So what is your role in Chicago for Britain and for the British people who are in the Midwest?
So I mean, fundamentally, an ambassador is the representative of a country in another country. So the ambassador in Washington, our ambassador in Washington, represents the whole of the UK in the whole of the United States. This country is just too big for that.
Yeah.
So what we do is we split the country up into very unequal chunks, and we have a consul general who basically then takes on, is delegated the responsibility of representing the UK across that region. Now, I'm fortunate and also complain a lot that the region I cover is 25% of the US. We have 7 other consuls general in the US covering the other 3/4. So I get the best deal and the worst deal in equal measure. But what my job fundamentally is to get out, and so I live in Chicago, but I travel extensively across the Midwest, and I get out and I try and get to meet communities of Americans who we don't know well and don't know us well, and try to be in front of them, try to understand them, and try to explain to them what the UK means for the United States. So in Washington, we talk about big global issues. In rural Kansas or in Missouri or in South Dakota, we talk about things that matter to those people. It could be talking about agricultural challenges. It could be talking about tariffs. It could be talking about immigration. It could be talking about all of their lived experiences, so that when I have to explain to my government and my ambassador in Washington what's happening in American politics, I have a view that is different to the view in Washington. It's the view of the real people in the real America. And I'd say this is the heartland. This is where real Americans come to play and where they're from. And so me being able to get out and get amongst them. So it's about explaining what the UK does in the world, why we think the way we think about big issues, and why and try and understand what they expect of us as an ally and a partner. I also try and sort of spread the word on culture and music, on food, and also explain to them what the modern Britain looks like. We have some phenomenal TV programs like Downton Abbey and Bridgerton, kind of. Downton Abbey. We have The Crown. We have all these things that tell a story, but it's a fictionalized story of the UK. My job is to promote the modern Britain, the multicultural, diverse, proud country that's comfortable with its history, complicated as our history is. And I explain how we kind of live together. We have challenging times in the UK as in the US right now with views on migration and all those other things. But I try and explain how as a country we come together and try and celebrate what we bring, what we have as a country unified around a common set of ideals, and they're the ideals that we share with the United States: democracy, freedom, the right to be who you want to be, and that's what I go out and talk about.
And that's kind of what Anglotopia has been doing for 19 years, is celebrating the best of British culture and history and travel. And it's a lot of people just don't realize how wonderful the place it is. And we
Mhm.
just love to tell people that.
And in fairness, I spend a lot of time explaining to Brits how wonderful America is, because this is a phenomenal. I mean,
Yeah.
I've talked about Chicago. I could talk about Chicago all day, but if you go to Madison, it's one of the prettiest capitals I've ever been to in Wisconsin. If you go to Cincinnati in Ohio, phenomenal city. If you go, I mean, I was in Sioux Falls, South Dakota recently. There are some absolutely spectacularly brilliant places. Kansas City and its barbecue. I talk to Brits about get out. And New York's great. LA's great, San Francisco's great, Florida's great. But there's a whole big country of diverse opportunity in the United States that you need to go and explore. So I spend all my time reversing your message and saying the Midwest is great too, and it's full of culture and full of fabulous people and great beer and great food. So I do the same job as you, but in reverse as well. It's probably not my core job. I'm supposed to be selling Britain, but I sell the Midwest too.
Well, we appreciate it. And so speaking of the area, so you represent 14 states, and that's huge. Like you said, that's probably, is that the biggest
We're
territory?
50%. Yeah, we're 50%
Yeah.
bigger than the next territory.
Wow. So what is what, because of that incredible diversity, what does that mean for the UK's interests? What in a typical week, what are you going to see and do out in this area?
So in the first sort of 2 years of the job, first 20 months of the job, my focus has been about building commercial and scientific and people-to-people relationships. So it's about embracing the cultural piece, which you very helpfully support us in. It's about talking to universities about the great science that's going on here and how the UK and universities and these universities can come together. Because between us, we have 4 to 10 greatest universities in the world, and the US has the other 6.
Yeah.
So we've got the world covered between us. So we try and bring those universities together. We try and support the companies. There's some great historic investors in the UK from here. Kraft Heinz and Heinz Big Bean. The emblematic element of the British breakfast is an American product that all Brits think is British and Americans think is a joke.
And you can't find here.
You got to find it, because Americans say, why would you put beans on your breakfast? But the point is that I mean, they've been in the UK for over 100 years. We've got we've got great British companies like Rolls-Royce in Indiana who make aero engines, who are very big in nuclear now. And so it's about helping out those companies in the two directions to grow, to build, to do more, to stay abreast of technology. So that's been the core focus. My other focus is understanding the politics, what's under the surface. And, as you may have spotted, there are some midterms coming up in November, and there's lots of primaries. My region, we have 105 members of the House of Representatives in my region, and we have 28 senators. So I argue, and I think it's true, that the region I cover, the 14 states that I cover, will decide who controls the House, who controls the Senate, and probably in 28, who is president of the United States. And so there's a lot of interest in what's happening under the surface. And so I spend a lot of time trying to dig deep, not overtly politically, just trying to listen to people, listen to farmers, listen to kind of people in agricultural areas, inner cities, in places like Detroit and Cleveland, Kansas City, St. Louis, getting out there and meeting lots of different people and hearing their voices, and trying to figure out what's driving them, what do they fear, and what's their kind of, Americans are fundamentally positive people. What gets them up in the morning, and what's driving them to do better? And that gives me a sense of where politics is going in this country as well. So I do a little translational piece there as well about politics.
So interesting. I imagine there's a lot of threading the needle, so you don't, between your own government, between our government, and all those representatives and senators. I imagine that's quite a challenge dealing with all those different personalities.
Yeah, and we get down to kind of city mayors who are really important people. We get down to state houses, and I've had the privilege of addressing the state house in Missouri and the state house in Illinois. I mean, I'm in Illinois. I'm standing on the podium that Lincoln stood on, and talking to elected representatives about my country. I mean, that's a phenomenal, opportunity and a great gift to me. And it means that I can meet people where they are and talk about their issues that matter to them. And what the big lesson I learn is that the big kind of global issues that we fixate on, that's not what gets people up in the morning. What gets people in the morning is is how do I pay my bills? How do I sell my product? How do I, can I get my corn out of the field? And is there a market for it? And it's understanding that and allows us to understand better what's driving politics in the United States.
So let's talk about today. So we're here to celebrate the King's official birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure that our American listeners understand what that actually is, because it's one of those very British traditions that sounds eccentric until you understand it. The King's actual birthday is in November.
Yes.
But the official birthday is in June. Why?
So very simply, we are the only country in the world. Well, officially, there are two countries in the world that don't have a national day. The United Kingdom and Denmark. Denmark has a sort of semi-official day, the constitutional day. So we're kind of the only country in the world without a national day. And overseas, in diplomatic circles, every country celebrates its national day. It's a big party to celebrate that country. And so we don't have one. So I wouldn't say we created one, but we use the official anniversary of the King's coronation as kind of the day that we celebrate. And the King, and previously Her Majesty the Queen, helpfully it was in June, which is, I wouldn't say the best month, but the least worst month in the UK to have an outdoor event. And so that's the Trooping of the Colour as a celebration of the King's, the anniversary of his coronation. And so we use that as our celebratory point overseas. There's not actually a day. It's a period of time in June that we can hold an event in. And that's why we do it. So we don't have a national day. You guys have 4th of July. We don't have.
There's a joke there about how all those national days are celebrating independence.
Yeah. People often ask me, why is the Brits don't really care about the flag? I mean, we do care about the flag. You can make clothes out of the flag, and if the flag touches the floor, it's not a big deal in the UK. And I always make the point, and I've lived, I say, all around the world, countries that have had to fight for liberty and have to fight for independence, the flag is the symbol of that. So in the United States, and pretty much every country I've lived in India, in Venezuela, the flag is like it's the symbol of their liberty. Our flag was created really from the existing countries that we had. So Scotland, Wales. Well, it was England, Scotland, Wales, and then later Northern Ireland. So the Union flag is basically a combination of 4 different crosses that make up those 4 countries, those constituent parts of the UK. So all of those things to say that we need a day to celebrate our country in other countries. And so we've kind of used the King's coronation as that occasion.
So we're at the Chicago History Museum today, which is fitting, because I didn't know this until I was researching this interview, that the community partner for this event, the Chicago Public Library Foundation, and they're holding it here in honor of a remarkable bit of Anglo-American history.
Yeah.
That after the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, Queen Victoria and around 8,000 British donors, including Benjamin Disraeli, Alfred Lord Tennyson, John Stuart Mill, sent books to help rebuild Chicago's libraries. And that donation directly led to the founding of the Chicago Public Library. And Victoria's copy of a biography of Prince Albert, personally signed by her, is still in the library special collection. So can you tell us about that connection and why it feels so right to celebrate today?
It's a story that I heard. Actually, the governor of Illinois told me the story when I first arrived at an event, and I didn't know it. And I went out and researched it, and my team got really kind of caught up in this. And we think it's a brilliant example of how a gesture, in 1871, still resonates now. Literacy matters, books matter, libraries matter, availability and access to libraries really matter. And so when we were planning this event, we thought, well, let's celebrate that. Let's celebrate the fact that we did something very simple to help rebuild literacy in Chicago after the Great Fire. And so tonight we're going to encourage our guests to donate to the Chicago Library Foundation to kind of continue that process of making learning and literature and enjoyment of books available to all Chicagoans. The availability of stories and history shouldn't be limited to the rich and famous. It should be available to everybody. So we want to kind of encourage that spirit that Queen Victoria started all those years ago, that let's give books. Let's give people access to books. And so that's what we're going to celebrate tonight.
That's wonderful. I would say Chicago is a very bookish city. We've got some great bookstores, and we've got a great literary heritage. Ernest Hemingway's from here. And we also, a lot of libraries in the Midwest were funded by Andrew Carnegie, who
Hmm.
was born in Britain and made his fortune here in the US. So it's that Anglo-American heritage is strong, and a lot of people just don't even know it's there.
And as I said before, we kind of speak the same language, so it's
Yeah.
it's really easy.
Yeah. So this year marks America 250, which is America celebrating its 250th anniversary of its independence from you. I have to ask, as the representative of the country that the Declaration of Independence was written against, how do you approach this year?
We're celebrating it. You know, we are. I mean, the reason we're holding a King's birthday party this year, we don't hold them every year. The reason we're doing it this year, and we're doing it across all of our consulates and, of course, the embassy, is to celebrate America 250. We're making a point of celebrating America 250. The King visited a few weeks ago as part of that celebration, because we, flippantly, I'd say, we celebrate the fact that this is the greatest startup in history. Right? we argued a little bit, and there was some spilled tea, and despite all of that, we can still come together. And 250 years on, no two countries do more together in the world. Whether it be our military, our intelligence services, our economies are intertwined and interconnected. Our service industries, of which the UK and the US are dominant, they are integral. So this is a 250-year story of a challenging start and a fantastic legacy of history of the 20th century. We came together to do great things, in the 21st century, whether it be science or culture, we're doing great things together as well. So for us, it's a great celebration of what America has achieved. And there's no bitterness. We like to have a little joke every now and again. When my speech later, I'll be making a few jokes about that. But the point is that we see this as a celebration of America's incredible story that we are part of. Not necessarily a great part at the start, but certainly in the last 150 of those 250 years, we have been a friend, a partner, an ally, a supporter. And many of the people in this country who have led this country from George Washington onwards have their heritage in our country, and we want to celebrate that as well. So we're all in on 250.
Well, I love that, because a lot of people don't realize that the 250 years before independence, we couldn't have been more English or British.
Yeah.
And the founding fathers, they were just British people asking for their rights as British people.
And I have to say, I saw Hamilton recently, and I've got to say, the best character in Hamilton is the King, and everyone agrees, right?
Yes.
I mean,
yeah, he's great. He has the best.
he has the best songs, yeah.
Yeah. So
and he will be back. No jokes.
Fifth column. There's a joke about a fifth column there. So the King addressed a joint session of Congress, which is a very rare honor and occasion. I believe his mother only did it once or twice. So what did that visit to Congress mean, and what did that speech mean for you as a consulate?
It was huge. The speech to Congress, I think, the speech at the state dinner as well, both phenomenally crafted and impeccably delivered by the King. The King has a unique role to play in diplomacy, in political diplomatic relations, between prime ministers and presidents. You have moments you have highs and you have lows, and you have challenges and you have opportunities, and some heads of state get on well, some don't. And there are moments, but fundamentally, we're all, our political leadership are driven by politics, and politics is a brutal game. The King kind of rises above that, and so he was able to come at a challenging time in our relationship and remind Americans and remind Brits as well that there are fundamentally more important things than the moment that we're in, and that is our shared values. And so he spoke about values. He spoke about our shared values. He spoke about our combined history and how we got to where we are, whether it be Magna Carta through to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. All of these things are the same thread, and we believe the same things. And he just took a moment at Congress just to remind everybody that. And it was powerful moments. I've had politicians from both sides of the aisle come to me and say, "Wow, that was an important moment." And it was, because, in the modern world, we get so caught up in Twitter or X and TikTok and Instagram and instant gratification online, and everything is short term and everything is immediate. And somebody who stands up there, who's representing a very long historical legacy, to just say, take a pause, think about the big things. The big things are, what do we have in common and what values do we share? I think that was the message that he landed absolutely beautifully. No criticism of anybody, just reminded us of who we are. And I think that's a really human thing to do.
Well, and he spoke to two audiences with the same message, and both sides heard what they wanted to hear. So it's a masterclass in threading the needle.
Yeah, because fundamentally, and I say this about British politics, I say this about American politics. I'm apolitical. We're not political appointees. I'm an independent civil servant, so I don't have views on politics at home or views on politics here. I just had to analyze them. It wasn't that people heard what they wanted to hear. Fundamentally, 80% is agreed. Americans, whether it be on the left or the right, fundamentally agree 80% of the time. There's a nuance on that, and there's a bit on the edge that they disagree violently on. But most of it is, the fundamental things that we all agree on. 80% of the time, both sides can say, yeah, actually that works for me. And that's what we just focused on, that stuff. We focus on the big things that we agree on, and we'll worry about the things we disagree on at other times and other places.
So we've got to get the king to Chicago. We got to get him to try some deep dish.
I kind of hoped we would get him here. It was challenging to every city in America wanted the king to visit. I was pushing hard for Chicago, but Washington is the place that you have to visit, and it's important. It was really important that he went there and did that. But a lot of Chicagoans, a whole bunch of Chicagoans were at the garden party at the embassy and met the king, and a lot of our business and political leadership here were able to go and do that. So that was fantastic.
So Chicago itself has a long history with Britain. So beyond the library story, there are architectural connections, there are commercial ties. So what does the Anglo-Chicago relationship look like to you from where you sit?
It's really interesting, because so much of what is Chicago comes from its heritage. And now, unusually, in America, for American big cities, it's not really a British heritage per se. There were Germans, and there were Norwegians, and there were Italians, and there were Poles and Ukrainians. Everybody is here, and Irish, of course, as well. So there's lots of different communities that made up this kind of melting pot that is Chicago. But we look at people like Frank Lloyd Wright, the man from Wisconsin who created the skyscrapers and the skyline. His family are Welsh. And so, the clue's in the name, but his family are Welsh. Even Abraham Lincoln. When I was speaking at the house in Springfield, I was doing a deep dive into, I've got to find a Lincoln connection somewhere. I didn't realize, but Lincoln's his great grandfather was from a little village in North Wales, which is 40 miles from my hometown in Liverpool. So even Lincoln's roots are into North Wales as well. So a very strong Welsh connection. But in more, even today, if you look at the Bean. Brit, right? It's so we with a little bits of Britain everywhere in this city, and there's a little bits of Chicago in the UK as well. So but the thing about living in the US as a Brit is that we talk about this a lot in the office. Is that if you're pretty much any other country in the world, if you have a national day or a cultural day, there is genuine interest in it because it's unusual. If we have a British cultural day, most Americans are like, yeah, I kind of know that already. I don't need to go to that because I know about it. We do a British Music Cultural Day in the United States. You put the Beatles and Oasis and the Stones. Everyone's like, well, that's not interesting. We hear that all the time. So our culture is so kind of deep.
It is
deeply interconnected that it's very difficult for us to separate it out. I had an whole argument in the office today about we were talking about Mumford and Sons, who were playing this evening in Wrigley, and a lot of people don't realise it's a British band. And the Killers, who played at the Champions League final a few weeks ago, I assumed they were British. So there is this kind of complete cross culture that we don't know where our own cultures start and other people's cultures end when it comes to the United States. So it's more difficult in many respects to be seen as different in Chicago, but I don't mind that. I there's no place I've ever lived that I felt more at home. So it's an easy one to.
Yeah, and it's the transatlantic train is two ways. Big parts of the London Underground were built by a Chicagoan, Charles Yerkes. Gordon's Selfridge founded Selfridges.
That's right. And the TV series I never watched, but my wife used to watch it about that. Very founding of Selfridges.
Yeah, so Chicago has deep roots in Britain too. So now So you've spent many years representing Britain abroad. Does that change how you see Britain yourself? Do you find yourself appreciating things about home differently from a distance?
Yeah, I mean, absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? That's true, and it's always funny when you meet diaspora groups overseas. Some of the Scots, the Irish are very, very kind of prominent. Welsh as well. They long for the homeland, and a lot of the kind of songs are about the homeland. It's absolutely true. When you live away, you miss simple things, you miss important things, you miss family, you miss culture. I mean, I miss sport. I can watch it, but I miss being at sporting events. But the most important thing is that when you're away from home, you realize how great your country is. And there's things about the UK that I took for granted when I lived there. And now representing my country overseas, I actually realize that we're really good at many things, whether it be science or culture or music or sport or sometimes politics. But literature. There's so much that we have brought to the world, and you don't really understand that until you're not in it. And obviously, representing your country, you dive into it much more. So the longer I stay away, and the more I've represented my country overseas, the prouder I am of that country, warts and all. I'm proud of the history, even though the history of the transatlantic slave trade, which was fundamentally started in my hometown of Liverpool, which is why the International Slavery Museum is in Liverpool. We've embraced our history and the fact that our city was built on the back of slaves. We've embraced that. That's part of our culture. That's part of who we are. We're not pulling down statues. We're just making sure we know who those statues are of, and they were usually men of their time, and we understand that the things they did then would not be tolerated now. But we don't so it's about embracing all of that and being overseas and being able to promote my country. It's important that we remind people that you didn't just land here from another planet. Your country has evolved, and you can celebrate all that went before. Winston Churchill, I gave a speech about him recently in Fulton, Missouri, to celebrate a big anniversary of his speech there, his famous Iron Curtain speech. And there are people that want to kind of talk about Winston Churchill in a negative light now. No, he was a man of his times, and he was a genius war prime minister, and we have to celebrate that. And I, it's intolerable, even as somebody of an Indian origin whose grandfather was in Bengal during the famine. Doesn't matter. The man was the man at the moment. So it's the more I'm away from my country, the more I understand what we've brought to the world. But what I speak to a lot of young people in America, a lot of school students and high school students and college students. And the thing I always say to them is, if you ever get a chance, travel, spend time abroad. Because when you spend time overseas, a semester abroad or travel for Peace Corps or whatever it is, take time away from your life here, and you'll understand, that the country that you love isn't perfect. People see it differently when you're abroad, but the longer you think and the more you think about that, the more you will appreciate what your country does. And I think that's a really important message I always give to Americans. Get on a plane, go and spend some time overseas. I don't mean a 2-week vacation in the Amalfi Coast and London. I mean, go and spend a semester abroad. Go and spend a few months living in somebody else's culture and have a different perspective of what America gives to the world. And it gives a huge amount, but it'll change your perspective a little bit.
Yeah, and I try to spend as much time in Britain as I possibly can. And when I come home, still happy to be home in Chicago.
Absolutely.
Because it's home. And do you find there's a particular place or tradition or piece of culture that you find yourself championing around the Midwest here?
I mean, I'm an unapologetic Liverpudlian, right? So I love the fact that everywhere I've been in the world, including in a Chinese restaurant in Somalia in 1998, I hear Beatles music. I can't go anywhere without hearing Beatles music. And that is, there's 4 young kids, working class kids from my hometown. I spend all my time as Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and just going around with the director and just say, oh, British and British and British and British. I just love kind of talking about the kind of what we have done for music in the 20th and 21st century. And obviously all of that evolved, and the Beatles, Paul McCartney talks about this a lot. The Beatles evolved from African American rock and roll in the 50s and 60s. That's where they got their inspiration, and then they took it to a different level. But it's that musical culture. And the other thing that it's very much a Chicago has got it's taught me this, is I've never really been a great theatre goer. I've never really been a great lover of Shakespeare. I mean, I was, at school we were taught Shakespeare by reading the book, which is just not the way
That's not,
Shakespeare is
yeah,
supposed to be
no.
learned. But Ed Hall, who's the director of the Chicago Shakespeare Theatre here, has kind of infected me now. I've been to so many first nights of all of their performances here, and I've become kind of addicted to theatre. And I've been, the Chicago Broadway on Chicago. They do an amazing job of bringing shows here. So I've really gotten into theatre and appreciate British. What Britain does for theatre as well, and for musical theatre, and for for comedy and for drama. So all of the music and cultural stuff. It's not really what I do in a job, but it's a great tool for delivering messages and getting you in the room.
Yeah, and Chicago has a great theater scene, and we get a lot of the great British plays and musicals, at least at some point in their run.
My wife went to see Kinky Boots yesterday, and she
Yeah.
said it was phenomenal. I couldn't go, unfortunately, but she took some friends, and it was amazing. Another British play here. I saw the Harry Potter Cursed Child when it opened here.
Mm.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
It's,
Six is coming back too.
Yeah, and there's one Notebook is not British, but Notebook's coming on in this summer as well. My daughter's very excited about that. But yeah, we speak the same language, but we have a different take on comedy, a different take on drama. We use language slightly differently, and it's great that I can appreciate American theatre and music and culture, and Americans can appreciate British as well. It's fun to play with.
So now I'm going to ask you the hardest, most controversial question in this interview. What's your favorite tea?
My favorite tea. This is where it gets embarrassing. I don't drink tea.
Oh no!
I know. I make a lot of jokes about tea in my speech tonight, but for different reasons. But no, I'm not a great tea drinker. If I was going to drink tea, I would drink probably what we call in the UK Builder's tea, which is kind of PG Tips, or one of those kind of northern Yorkshire teas, which the old joke is you stew the tea bag for so long that the spoon stands up on its own. It's got to be strong tea. But I'm very much I'm a bit of a coffee snob, unfortunately. I'm an espresso lover, which it's just great because I can get good coffee here as well.
Yeah, I'm a Yorkshire tea man myself.
Yeah,
Every morning, it's
yeah,
great fuel for the day.
yeah. I mean, if I was going to go tea, it'd be Yorkshire tea. The problem is that I've been trying to kind of be healthy, and if I drink tea, I always want to have a biscuit.
Mm.
I can't drink tea without a biscuit. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm on a health plan diet myself in preparation for walking Hadrian's Wall, and I can have.
That's a great walk.
Yeah, I cannot wait. 60 days is I'm going, but I can't have sugar in my tea, and I can't have biscuits with my tea, but I can have artificial sweetener in my tea. So
It works. It works.
it works. And needs must. So finally, for my last question, in the 2 years you've been here, what is now your favorite thing about Chicago? What has it given you that you didn't expect?
This is going to probably sound a little kind of patronizing, but it's people. I mean, this is the 10th different overseas assignment that we've done. I haven't lived anywhere. There's a lot of places where you meet people and they're friendly, and they'll say, yeah, we great, come for dinner. And then you never ever hear from them again. And Brits do that as well. In Chicago, they then text you and they phone you and then you go for dinner, and then they make you feel the most welcome people in the world. This is, of all the places I've lived, this is the easiest place I've found to actually build a network of people. In our job, my wife and I joke about this. Our kids are older. When our kids were young, it was really easy to make friends when you move every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
When you don't have kids at school anymore, it's very difficult. You've got your professional colleagues, and then that's it. Chicago is the easiest place in the world to build a network of friends. And I have lots of different friends, and not all professional contacts. I mean, there's lots of different people. You can stand in a bar and someone will start talking to you about the Cubs or the Sox or the Bulls, and fundamentally how terrible everyone is at the moment. That's the topic of conversation. And I've been there, done that with my own teams. But the point is that the people here are, and it's not just a Chicago thing, it's kind of a Midwest thing. People are authentically friendly. And the authentic piece is the key word. Is that people genuinely want to know a little bit about you, and they want to share a little bit about them. And if you strike up a conversation, you get on, they actually want to kind of go and hang out with you again, and they follow up. And yeah, it is a great place, and you can argue with Chicagoans as well, and they don't take it to heart. So yeah, people are amazing. I could have said food and culture and music and theatre and the skyline and the river walk and the architecture tour, which I've done way too many times now because everybody wants to do it when they visit. But you can never do it too many times because it's something new every
Yep,
time you
there
do
is.
it. But no, fun. It's the people are great.
I feel I should ask a World Cup question.
Mm.
Is England going to bring it home?
So I have to confess that I am not an England fan. Yeah, I mentioned before my dad was from India. My mum is from mum's family are kind of Welsh Irish, and I'd grown up in Liverpool. Liverpool's a slightly strange place. We don't really consider ourselves English. We're British, not English. So I'm not. I mean, I will help cheer on England, but it's not my team. Wales have qualified. I would have been a different conversation. But I don't know. I was joking with my daughters are both England fans, and I was joking with them today. They didn't appreciate it about, England look really good right now. They look really strong yesterday. I think it's the most balanced England side for a long time. And frankly, there's no really big standout teams. So Argentina, France, Germany, always there. Spain are always there. England are in that top five of the European teams. But yeah, they could. But I think the conditions, playing in hot, humid stadiums is going to be challenging for all the European teams. So I'm not looking beyond Argentina right now.
Well, Richard, it has been a genuine pleasure. Thank you for holding this party and taking the time before to speak with us, and for representing His Majesty with such evident enthusiasm. So happy King's birthday. For listeners wanting to follow the British Consulate General in Chicago, you can find them on X, and I will link to the show notes where you can follow them. And if you're in Chicago today and you missed the party, but there's always next year, if you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, please subscribe, like, or comment. And if you enjoy the Anglotopia podcast, please consider joining the Friends of Anglotopia Club, where you can get early access to new episodes and connect with other Britain enthusiasts. So join us next time as we continue exploring the people, places, and stories that make Britain's cultural heritage so endlessly fascinating to discover. And also, thank you again to the Chicago Historical Society for hosting us for this interview. We really appreciate it.